Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I want to appreciate God Almighty for the privilege of this fellowship, and I must thank God for the people God has used as instruments to bring me on board to this fellowship, the management of RCC, the fellows, the students. Everybody has been very wonderful, the assistants, and I pray God will bless you mightily as you have been used of God to assist me. Today I'm presenting on Bio-Culturalism, urban grooves, and African mythology. According to the great American anthropologist William Russell Bascom, who lived between 1912 and 1981, he said the Yoruba of western Nigeria have large, dense, permanent settlements based upon farming rather than upon industrialization, the pattern of which is traditional rather than an outgrowth of acculturation. They are undoubtedly the most urban of all African peoples, the percentage living in large communities being comparable to that in European nations. Also, Gredwin Wright, a renowned professor of architecture at Columbia University, states, while African cities have grown exponentially since independence, colonial patterns of land use, restrictions, neglect, and adaptation remain in evidence. Selesa and Canipella, in their work, Sacred Spaces and Public Quarters, African Cultural and Economic Landscape, contest the simplistic and superficial characterization of African cities often made by academic tourists who have fixed Eurocentric view of what a real city should be. And the central struggle of the post-colonial African city has been between the different value systems, priorities, and mechanisms embodied in modernist conceptions and structures of the city and in the imaginations and the needs of the popular classes, particularly those currently marginalized, as they seek to reclaim and reshape urban spaces in their own images. While with this background, I want to highlight the overview of my presentation today. But when I'll be talking about the context, I'll be situating Africa, the discourse within Africa and Yoruba nation in particular. Then I will, my concern will be problematizing nature, culture, and architecture at crossroads. Then my curiosity, the emerging research questions in this discourse, and then how I use the concept of Bio-Culturalism to answer to answer the questions. Then case studies where I show colonial footprints versus biocultural realities on cityscapes, and then I talk briefly about the content of the emerging book coming out of this project. Now, the context. In Africa, Nigeria has the largest human population of over 200 million, according to the World Population Review 2019. Out of this population, the Yorubas are the largest ethnic group, up to 21%. That's 42 million people, approximately. They occupy Ondo, Osun, Ogun, Oyo, Ekiti, Lagos, including parts of Kogi, Kwara states, apart from those in the diasporas. The Yoruba nation is located between longitudes 1 degree 25 minutes east and 6 degree 45 minutes east, and latitudes 5 degree 55 minutes north and 9 degree 10 minutes north above the equator. The Yorubas are descendants of Oduduwa. Mythology holds that the world as created by Oduduwa, Oduduwa is the Yoruba name for God, started at Ile-Ife and therefore termed the source, from where the progenitors of Oduduwa, the acclaimed first created man, scattered to found the various locations that form the Yoruba nation. The Yoruba believe that humans are tenants on God's earth, and they believe in ancestral worship and other supernatural beliefs and their associated sanctions based on taboo system, which is mystical. Now, the question is, what are myths? What are myths? According to Adedeji, 2004, myths are storerooms of African beliefs, traditions, and values. They are ethnocentric views that deal with the actions of humans, living and non-living objects. They are both natural and supernatural, metaphysical, of the factual and fictional. They could be in context beyond space and time, capturing the intangibles of life. Myths illuminate the culturally embedded assumptions of daily activities. Myths offer reasons and causes for events from the mundane to the profound. They are transmitted orally from one generation to another. Indeed, myths establish African authenticity. They are also social codes that are brought into being through mythology. The Yoruba and the African myths are based on local gods. We call them orishas. These are deities with cosmological considerations such that major roots in the city have orientation to the palace, such that they coincided with the cardinal points, and the cardinal points are associated with local gods. These are based on cosmology, mimesis, and geosophy. Cosmology refers to mythology and Yoruba Aboriginal city foundation. For instance, Oduduwa Shrine, Ile-Ife, is believed to be the burial place of the progenitor of Yoruba race. Osun River is the foundation of Osogbo city. The city is not only started believe in the groove, is believed to house and be the home of Osun goddess. Oluma Rock is the foundation of Abeokuta and is believed to be behind the war exploits of the people during series of intertribal wars. Ibadan Hills is the foundation of Ibadan and is believed to be behind the status of the city as a war camp where numerous war-displaced people sought refuge at the height of Hausa Fulani raid of the northern Yoruba kingdom of Old Oyo Empire. Mimesis highlights the principle of mimicry heavenly divinities in this material realm to arrive at 16 radial forms with prominent 4 cardinal points, which are representatives of the local gods. Therefore, the morphology of Yoruba city is based on geosophy, mimetic principles, and the mimetic theory of art. According to Feanga in 2008, he says the theory of mimetic theory of art states that the art is essentially an imitation of nature to construct site-specific identity where every age has its own inimitable view of nature, and nature and the universe use a fastidious set of active associations. This harmonious relationship is based on unity with nature by uninterrupted flow through connections between values and city form. It accommodates mimetic principles that tie the natural world to the people in definite places. In this sense, nature embraces the aesthetic configuration of available flora, rhythmic sense of water bodies, influence of fauna, and the circular movement of celestial bodies as culturally interpreted, and all methods of understanding and relating with the workings of the natural world. Therefore, urban grooves are sacred landscapes in urban context, conserved by traditional system of taboos and mythological connections with elements of nature for cultural value systems and traditional worship. An example is Osun Grove, which I'm going to show you later in this presentation. Now, my concern in this work is about nature, culture, and architecture at crossroads. I intend to explain the problem in this project with a tripartite lens of culture, nature, and architecture. I have chosen these themes because of their well-founded footing in architectural anthropology discourses, even though without much interest in the recurring ontological and epistemological wars on the narratives between nature and culture binary. Architectural anthropology is meant here as a product, as a process and product of understanding human environment with anthropological lens. Evidently, cultural discourse is eminent in the relationship of humans as biological beings with the environment in which they have their situated identities, as Torres and Hobbes in 2015 argue that culture is an anthropological construct. Secondly, even though nature may not be synonymous with urban grooves, I have decided to select the term because of my interest in this work is primarily on the floral component of urban nature of Africa. This is essentially important as green nature have been found to support and enhance the well-being of urban dwellers. Thirdly, architecture is both the discipline and profession with the overall goal of providing suitable spaces for all human, non-human activities, whether open or closed, built or unbuilt. The word urban is captured in this sense, architecture being at both micro and macro levels. At the micro level, architecture is understood as buildings and the environment they are situated, and at the macro level as cities being urban in both ways. Built and unbuilt spaces are involved, and for that reason buildings are understood as small cities and cities as big buildings, with the duos providing spaces for character and produce places. These spaces are imbued with meanings given to them by culture-nature nexus. The problem lies in the disparities, disconnects, and discrepancies in how Africans and the colonialists understood nature, leading to cultural differences in relating with nature. This informed the Western political shaping of human, non-human relations in the urban design, that is, the architecture of the cities, processes of Yoruba cities at the wake of colonialism. The spiritual aspect of planning settlements around groups that define Yoruba urban cultural identity and its practices have been decontextualized by the imposition of Western urban planning. Pre-colonial African urban spaces were symbolic and social, while nature is understood as material and spiritual entity by indigenous Africans. The colonialists have only physical and biological notions of nature. How architecture should respond to these disparities, since city planning as Western origin is therefore a problem. With the overriding effect of Western city planning in Africa, architecture is therefore edged in between nature or culture dilemma. The biophilic view of nature holds that there is an innate and genetically determined affinity of humans with the natural world that can enhance human well-being. The notion of nature accounts for the inclusion of natural spaces in form of green and blue landscape elements in Western planning. The subjugation of the truly biocultural notion of nature, biophilic Eurocentrism, claiming universality, has not only affected African urban spaces in the colonial eras, but replacing sacred grove with English types of parks and gardens, but continues to affect modern urban planning in Africa. The differences in notions of nature can also be an explanation for the Western colonial planning in British West African cities that incorporate socio-cultural segregation in land use. European quarters were christened as European reservation areas, with modern architecture incorporating ornamental green spaces for passive and active recreation, whereas the native quarters at the city cores retained the biocultural identity of the Yoruba people in particular. This makes African cities dual cities, with the largest percentage of places that are no more imbued with African notion of nature and therefore do not seem to support the well-being of the dwellers. The problem could be simply summarized in Simpson Davis' 1999 word as follows: the persistence of inherited and generally inappropriate town planning mechanisms and procedure is problematic. The result is that land use zoning, building standards, and urban design more generally have failed to address the needs and aspirations of the majority of urban dwellers, or to formulate more locally, culturally, economically, and environmentally appropriate alternatives, even for new developments. What are then my curiosity in this work? What are the cultural value systems of urban groups in African cities in the past? How have these value systems been sustained through cultural mechanisms? In what ways have colonialism, urbanism, and civilization forces impacted on them? What is their cultural current status? What borrowed Western initiatives have been engaged on them? How have the different initiatives impacted on their cultural value systems? How can they be enhanced to support the well-being of African urban dwellers? Answers to these questions were sought by engaging the concept of urban bioculturalism in an ethnographic field survey. Then, how is urban bioculturalism conceptualized in this project? Concept: urban bioculturalism. The urban bioculturalism has to do with the diversity of life in all of its manifestations, including biological, cultural, and linguistic, which are interrelated within a complex socio-ecological adaptive system in urban setting. It is based on biocultural diversity, which, according to Fletcher in 2012, adequately takes care of global policies on the interrelations of nature and culture, thereby remodeling globalization process in support of the acknowledgement of cultural rights of different cultures and their associated traditional knowledge and wisdom. But cultural diversity takes cognizance of the variety of human cultures, that is, the variety of worldviews, life, wills, knowledge, value system, practices, and forms of expression displayed by different human societies. It posits that humans differ in their valuations of nature and how different cultural groups in specific contexts interact with or value green open spaces. All these support the notion that bioculturalism is a view of the natural landscape that encourages stakeholders to recognize human society as an integral component of ecological systems and find ways for people to interact with and live joyfully with nature. I'll show you some case studies now before I continue. Now, here you see two contrasts. This is biophilic. People just go there for recreation. But people often, they don't usually go there as such because it doesn't conform to their identity. And then we see this other one, which is Osun Grove, located in Osogbo. Then, these are just part of the contrast. Now, Osogbo is in southwest Nigeria, and you can see the groove. You can see the groove at the heart of the city. Thank you very much. In this project, more than 90 people were interviewed. One of them says, God is the best artist. God is the best doctor. God is the best educationist. God is the best artist. The Bible told us that the whole world was a void, but he spoke a word and everything started. When you now look at the land, when you look at Osogbo land, look at the plants, look at the design of God on the trees. Most of the things we use today, they are what we have sustained to this moment. The shape of the plant insect. If you look at the color in in nature. So in terms of beauty, nobody has ever surpassed God. So when you come to Osun Grove, you see God in his natural sense. And that is why this is Natural History Museum, where you see God in his naturality. You learn so many things. Of course, we have so many things. Osogbo and its flora and fauna. We have so many plants that are very medicinal in nature. People come here. All these herbalist, traditional healers, the trees, the leaves, and all of them. The Osun worshippers use the water for all kinds of sicknesses and culture. Another interviewee, he says God's wonders cannot be described. We can see his works, plants, animals, and landscaping. Even celebrities come here. They don't need guide. They just sit down in one bush to get inspiration. Why don't they go to Agodi Gardens in Ibadan or Freedom Park, even here in Osogbo? They know they will enjoy that natural habitat here. Even the insect that will bite you is natural. Not insect that have beaten another person. There are over 450 plants recorded, over 250 medicinal herbs. People come here on hourly basis to pick herbs. The river itself is medicinal. The women you saw over there sitting under shade in the first palace, they are the custodians. If you tell them that you want to fetch the river water, they can almost turn you. They will tell you there is no water here. It is not water. They call it concoction. That means it works. Mind you, it works. It works for the people that believe in it. And then lastly, the content of the project, of the book project, is briefly summarized. In chapter 1, you see, I'm going to talk about the passive urban spaces of pre-colonial Africa. In chapter 2 are the lagoons, what happened, the entry points of colonial scale, then influencing the land, the colonial eras of acculturation. Chapter 4, now that they've gone, the post-colonial footprints on African cityscapes. Chapter 5, negotiating the boundaries, the nexus of nature, culture, and urban landscapes. Epilogue, as it was at the beginning, so it is now. Thank you for listening.